Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a penny you've probably ignored your whole life. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary. But what if that single cent, struck more than 50 years ago, quietly carries a story of American history, collector passion, and surprising value that most people never notice? Today, that story belongs to the 1973 Mint Mark Lincoln penny. This coin is officially known as the Lincoln 1 cent, struck in 1973 at the Denver Mint, identified by the small letter D just below the date. It was made to be everyday money, used for gas stations, grocery stores, and newspaper stands. Yet decades later, collectors look at this penny very differently. What once bought candy now sparks curiosity, debate, and sometimes real money. To understand why, we need to step back to the early 1970s. America was changing fast. The Vietnam War was coming to an end, inflation was rising, and the cost of metal was becoming a serious concern for the United States government. Pennies were still being made mostly of copper, but copper prices were climbing. Every cent mattered, both literally and financially. The U.S. Mint needed to strike billions of pennies to keep the economy moving, and 1973 was one of those heavy production years. The Denver Mint produced well over 2 billion pennies in 1973. That sounds like a huge number, and it is. But massive production doesn't automatically mean a coin is worthless. In fact, it often creates the perfect environment for mistakes, variations, and hidden treasures. When machines run nonstop, small errors slip through. Those errors are where collectors pay attention. The design of the 1973 penny follows the classic Lincoln look that Americans had seen for decades. On the front, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, facing to the right. This design first appeared in 1909 and was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Lincoln's calm expression, sharp profile, and strong jawline were meant to symbolize honesty, unity, and endurance. Above his head is the word liberty, and in front of his face is the famous phrase "In God We Trust" on the back of the coin. The 1973 penny still uses the Lincoln Memorial design, which had been introduced in 1959. The memorial building is centered, with tiny columns carefully engraved. If you look closely, you can even see a small seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, a detail many people never notice. Around the edges are the words United States of America and 1 cent, with E pluribus unum across the top. Now let's talk about what this coin is made of, because metal matters. The 1973 penny is composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc. That high copper content gives the coin its warm reddish color when new. Over time, exposure to air, moisture, and handling causes the color to darken. Collectors describe these color changes as red, red-brown, or brown, and those color differences play a big role in value. A bright red 1973 penny that looks almost new is far more desirable than one that's dark and worn. Most of these coins circulated heavily, which means truly clean examples are harder to find than you might expect. Condition can turn a 1 cent coin into something worth many dollars. But the real excitement around the 1973 penny comes from errors and varieties. This is where everyday coins become collector favorites. One of the most talked about issues from 1973 is the double die error. This happens when the coin design is impressed twice slightly out of alignment, causing letters or numbers to appear doubled. On some 1973 pennies, you can see doubling in the date or in the words "In God We Trust." These errors are not scratches or damage. They happen during the minting process and are highly collectible. Another sought-after error is the off-center strike. This occurs when the coin blank is not properly aligned in the press, causing part of the design to be missing. A clearly off-center 1973 penny, especially one where the date and mint mark are still visible, can bring strong interest from collectors. There are also coins struck on the wrong metal thickness, known as wrong planchet errors. While rare, a 1973 penny struck thinner or lighter than normal can stand out immediately when weighed. These unusual pieces often require professional verification, but when confirmed, they can be worth far more than face value. So, is the 1973 penny rare? In general circulation, no. Millions still exist. But rarity in coin collecting often comes down to condition and uniqueness. A worn 1973 penny is usually worth just 1 cent. A sharply struck, bright red example in near-perfect condition can sell for several dollars. Add a genuine mint error, and the value can jump dramatically. Real auction results show this clearly. High-grade 1973 pennies graded by professional services have sold for anywhere from $10 to over $100, depending on condition. Error coins can sell for even more. Some dramatic double-die examples and major off-center strikes have brought several $100s at auction. These are not myths or rumors. They are documented sales between collectors who know exactly what they are buying. Of course, with money involved, fakes and misunderstandings appear. Knowing how to identify a real 1973 penny is important. First, always check the date and the mint mark. The D should be clean and properly shaped, not glued on or scratched into place. Under magnification, real mint marks blend smoothly with the surface of the coin. Next, look at the weight. A normal 1973 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. A digital scale can help quickly spot something unusual. Also examine the edges and lettering. Genuine mint errors usually show smooth, natural metal flow, not sharp cuts or damage marks. Color is another clue. While cleaning might make a penny look shiny, it actually hurts value. Cleaned coins often show unnatural brightness, fine scratches, or uneven color. Serious collectors prefer original surfaces, even if the coin looks darker. One surprising fact about the 1973 penny is its connection to a famous coin that was never supposed to exist. In 1973, a small number of pennies were accidentally struck on leftover bronze planchets from earlier years when the mint was experimenting with different metals. While most confirmed examples come from other mints, the year itself remains a symbol of how transitional the early 1970s were for U.S. coinage. Collectors also love the 1973 penny because it represents the end of an era. Just a few years later, the mint would move away from high copper pennies due to rising costs. That makes 1973 part of the last generation of classic copper cents, a detail that gives it lasting appeal. For many people, this coin sparks nostalgia. It's the kind of penny that might have passed through your hands as a child, dropped into a piggy bank, or forgotten in a jar. Holding one today feels like touching a small piece of everyday American life from half a century ago. That emotional connection is powerful. Coin collecting isn't just about money. It's about stories, history, and discovery. The idea that something so small and common could hide value keeps collectors searching rolls, jars, and old collections. The 1973 penny reminds us that not every treasure looks like gold. Sometimes value hides in plain sight. A single letter beneath a date, a slight doubling in a word, or an unusually sharp strike can turn an overlooked coin into a conversation piece. So the next time you see a penny dated 1973 with a small D mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Examine the details. Think about where it's been and what it represents. Because even the most ordinary coin can carry an extraordinary story, and the 1973 Lincoln penny is proof that history often waits quietly, right in the palm of your hand. What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now is hiding a story worth far more than 1 cent? A story of history, change, and surprising value that most people overlook every single day. Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary but carries a fascinating legacy. The 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a United States 1-cent coin struck without a mint mark, meaning it was produced at the main minting facility in Philadelphia. At first glance, it appears just like countless other pennies from the late 20th century. But when you slow down and really look at it, this coin reflects a turning point in American coin history and continues to attract collectors decades later. To understand this penny, we need to step back to the year 1978. America was in a period of economic uncertainty. Inflation was rising, metal prices were fluctuating, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to keep producing coins that were affordable to make but durable enough to last in circulation. The Lincoln penny design, first introduced in 1909, had already become one of the longest-running designs in U.S. history. By 1978, the Lincoln cent was a familiar object in every American home, yet behind the scenes, important decisions were being made. The penny was struck by the United States Mint as part of its regular coin production for everyday use. Philadelphia, the original mint city, did not place mint marks on pennies at that time, which is why this coin appears blank below the date. This lack of a mint mark often confuses people, but it is actually a key identifier. No mint mark does not mean the coin is missing something. It means it was made exactly as intended. The front of the coin features the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing right. This portrait was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and has been used, with minor modifications, for over a century. The word liberty appears to the left of Lincoln, while the phrase "In God We Trust" sits above his head. The date 1978 is stamped clearly on the right side. The reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was used from 1959 until 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a detail many people miss. One of the most important features of the 1978 penny is its metal composition. It is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper with the remainder being zinc. This makes it heavier and more solid than modern pennies. Just a few years later, in 1982, the mint would switch to mostly zinc due to rising copper prices. That means the 1978 penny belongs to the final generation of traditional copper cents, and that alone gives it lasting appeal. Collectors often ask if there are errors or varieties associated with the 1978 no mint mark penny. While there are no famous, ultra-rare errors tied specifically to this year, there are still examples of minor minting mistakes that can increase value. These include off-center strikes, weak strikes where details appear faded, doubled lettering caused by die issues, and broad strikes where the coin spreads wider than normal. Such errors are uncommon, but when found in good condition, they can significantly raise collector interest. So why would a penny that was minted in large numbers be considered valuable at all? The answer lies in condition, copper content, and demand. Millions of 1978 pennies were produced, but most entered circulation and became worn over time. Finding one today in pristine, uncirculated condition is much harder than people expect. Collectors grade coins on a scale, and a high-grade example with full detail, sharp lettering, and original luster can be worth many times its face value. Real auction records show this clearly. Circulated 1978 no mint mark pennies are usually worth just 1 or 2 cents. However, uncirculated examples graded by professional services have sold for several dollars. In exceptional cases, top-graded specimens have sold for even more, especially when competition between collectors heats up. Error coins from this year, when authenticated, have sold for anywhere from $10 to well over $100 depending on the type and visibility of the error. Identifying a real 1978 no mint mark Lincoln penny is straightforward if you know what to look for. First, check the date carefully and confirm there is no D or S mint mark below it. Next, weigh the coin. A genuine copper penny from 1978 should weigh about 3.11 grams. The color should have a rich, warm copper tone, not the dull gray associated with zinc pennies. Be cautious of altered coins where mint marks have been removed. Under magnification, tampering usually leaves scratches or unnatural surfaces. One surprising fact about the 1978 penny is how many people unknowingly spent or discarded coins that would later become collectible. During the late 1970s, pennies were considered nearly worthless, and few people saved them. That lack of preservation is one reason high-quality examples are more desirable today. Another fun detail is that this penny was minted during the final years of the Lincoln Memorial reverse, a design that many collectors now view with nostalgia. Collectors love the 1978 no mint mark Lincoln penny because it represents stability and transition at the same time. It is a symbol of everyday America before major changes in coin composition and design. It is also accessible. Unlike rare gold coins or early colonial pieces, this penny invites anyone to start collecting without a huge investment. Many collectors remember finding one in pocket change and realizing, for the first time, that history could be held in the palm of their hand. Today, the appeal of this coin continues to grow. Copper prices, grading standards, and renewed interest in classic designs all play a role. For longtime collectors, the 1978 penny completes important sets. For new collectors, it offers an affordable entry point with real historical value. And for casual observers, it serves as a reminder that even the smallest objects can carry meaningful stories. So the next time you see a penny dated 1978, Don't rush past it. Take a closer look. That small copper coin may have traveled through decades of American life, passed through countless hands, and survived economic change, all to arrive in yours. Sometimes, the most overlooked coins are the ones that have the most to teach us. And sometimes, curiosity is worth far more than a single cent. Imagine pulling a single penny from your pocket and discovering it carries a hidden story from America's past. A story most people never notice. What if that ordinary-looking coin, dated 1979, could be more interesting and in some cases more valuable than you ever expected? Stay with me because this small copper coin has details that might completely change the way you look at your spare change. Today, we're talking about the 1979 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks just like countless other pennies Americans have used for decades. But behind that familiar design is a fascinating chapter of U.S. coin history, a time of economic pressure, rising metal costs, and subtle changes that collectors pay very close attention to today. The 1979 D. Lincoln penny was produced during a period of transition and uncertainty for American coinage. This penny was struck at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small letter D just below the date on the front. The design features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been part of American life for generations. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was used from 1959 until 2008, making it one of the longest-running reverse designs in U.S. history. To understand this coin, we need to step back into the late 1970s. The year 1979 was a challenging time for the United States. Inflation was high, metal prices were rising, and the cost of producing coins was becoming a serious concern. Copper, in particular, was getting more expensive. For decades, pennies had been made mostly of copper, and by the late 1970s, the value of the metal inside the coin was getting dangerously close to the coin's face value. The 1979 penny represents the final years of the traditional copper-based Lincoln cent. At this time, the penny was still made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, the same basic composition used for most of the 20th century. Just a few years later, in 1982, everything would change when the U.S. Mint switched to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. That makes the 1979 D penny one of the last of the classic copper Lincoln cents, and that alone gives it historical importance. The front of the coin shows Lincoln's profile, facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1979 with the D Mint mark to the right. The design was created by Victor David Brenner and has become one of the most recognized coin designs in the world. The back shows the Lincoln Memorial with tiny statues visible between the columns, including a small seated figure of Lincoln inside the building if you look closely. Most 1979 D pennies are not rare in the traditional sense. Millions were produced at the Denver Mint, and many are still found in circulation today. But value in coin collecting is not just about how many were made. Condition, errors, and special varieties play a huge role, and this is where the 1979 D penny becomes much more interesting. In average circulated condition, a 1979 D penny is usually worth just 1 cent. However, when you start looking at higher-grade examples, especially coins that were never used and still have their original shine, the value begins to rise. Uncirculated examples with strong detail and clean surfaces can be worth several dollars, and the best examples, graded by professional services, can sell for much more. Collectors pay close attention to condition. A coin with no wear, sharp lettering, and full original luster is far more desirable than one that has been scratched, dulled, or discolored from years of use. Pennies from this era often show heavy wear, so truly pristine examples are harder to find than many people expect. Even more exciting are error coins. The 1979 D penny is known for several types of mint errors that can significantly increase its value. Some examples were struck off-center, meaning the design is not properly centered on the coin. Others show double die errors, where parts of the design appear doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. These double details can sometimes be seen on the date, the word Liberty, or Lincoln's features. There are also pennies from 1979 D that show clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is missing because the metal blank was cut incorrectly. These errors are genuine mistakes made during production, and collectors love them because each one is unique. Depending on how dramatic the error is, these coins can sell for anywhere from tens to hundreds of dollars. Auction records give us a clear picture of what collectors are willing to pay. High-grade 1979D pennies, especially those graded at the top of the scale, have sold at major coin auctions for impressive prices. In some cases, coins graded MS-67 or higher have reached prices well into the hundreds of dollars. Error coins, particularly dramatic double dies or off-center strikes, can bring even more, depending on rarity and eye appeal. So how can you tell if you have a real and potentially valuable 1979D penny? First, check the date and look for the D mint mark just below the year. Next, examine the coin closely under good lighting. Look for doubling in the letters or numbers, unusual shapes, or missing parts of the design. A magnifying glass can be very helpful here. Weight is another clue. A genuine 1979 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams because of its copper composition. Coins that are significantly lighter may be damaged, altered, or from a different year with a zinc core. Sound can also be a hint. When gently dropped on a hard surface, copper pennies tend to make a slightly different sound than zinc ones. Though this method is less reliable than visual inspection and weighing, be cautious of altered coins. Some people try to fake errors by scratching, grinding, or reshaping coins. Real mint errors usually show smooth, natural metal flow and matching wear patterns. If you think you have something special, the best step is to have the coin examined by a reputable dealer or sent to a professional grading service for authentication. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1979D penny. This coin comes from the same era when the U.S. Mint was seriously considering eliminating the penny altogether because of rising production costs. It was also minted during a time when Americans were paying closer attention to inflation and the value of money, making even small coins like the penny part of larger economic conversations. Collectors today love the 1979D penny not because it is rare in everyday circulation, but because it represents the end of an era. It is one of the last copper pennies, a piece of history from a time just before a major change in U.S. coinage. For many collectors, especially beginners, it is an affordable way to own a meaningful part of American history. This coin is also popular because it encourages careful looking. Millions of people have handled these pennies without ever noticing the tiny details that can make one coin special. That sense of discovery is a big reason why coin collecting remains such a rewarding hobby. So the next time you see a 1979 penny with a small D under the date, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the condition. Look for errors. You might just be holding a small piece of copper history that connects you to a pivotal moment in America's past. Sometimes, the most ordinary objects tell the most interesting stories. And as you search through your change, remember this. The next valuable coin you find might not be gold or silver. It might just be a humble 1979D Lincoln penny, waiting for someone curious enough to notice it. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a penny that looks completely ordinary, a coin you might normally toss aside without a second thought. But what if that small copper-colored coin carried a story that connects American history, hidden minting mistakes, and the surprising possibility of real collector value? Today, that ordinary-looking coin is the 1984 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, and its story is far more interesting than most people ever realize. The 1984 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in the United States in 1984 at the Denver Mint. The small letter D below the date tells us exactly where it was made. At first glance, it looks just like millions of other Lincoln pennies, but collectors know that some coins from this year hold special secrets. To understand why, we need to step back and look at the moment in American history when this penny was created. The year 1984 was a time of change and confidence in the United States. The country was moving through a new economic era, technology was advancing, and everyday objects like coins were quietly adapting to rising costs. The Lincoln penny itself had already been part of American life for more than 7 decades. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln, the penny had become the longest-running design in U.S. coinage history. By 1984, the Lincoln cent was no longer made mostly of copper as it had been for generations. Rising metal prices forced the U.S. Mint to change the composition just 2 years earlier. Instead of solid copper, the 1984 penny was made from zinc with a thin copper coating. This change saved money, but it also created new challenges in the minting process. Those challenges would later lead to some of the most interesting errors collectors search for today. The Denver Mint played a major role in supplying coins for everyday use across much of the country. In 1984 alone, billions of Lincoln pennies were struck, with the Denver facility producing a massive share of them. With such high production numbers, quality control had to move fast, and when machines operate at that scale, small mistakes can slip through. For collectors, those mistakes are often where the real value lies. On the front of the coin, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, facing right. His calm expression and detailed features were designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose initials, VDB, appear subtly on the coin. The words "In God We Trust" appear above Lincoln's head, while "Liberty" is to the left, and the date with the D mint mark sits on the right. This design had already become deeply familiar to Americans by 1984. The back of the 1984 penny features the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was first introduced in 1959. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, a detail many people overlook entirely. The reverse includes the words United States of America and 1 cent, reminding us that even the smallest denomination carries national symbolism. The Lincoln Memorial itself represents stability and remembrance, values the penny was meant to quietly circulate with every transaction. So if billions of these coins were made, why do collectors care about the 1984 D penny at all? The answer lies in specific varieties and errors that turn an everyday coin into something far more desirable. One of the most famous errors associated with this year is known among collectors as the 1984 doubled ear variety. This error happened when the coin die received a misaligned impression, creating the appearance that Lincoln's ear was doubled. To the untrained eye, the doubled ear might look like a strange shadow or extra ridge. But to collectors, it is one of the clearest and most dramatic doubling errors of the modern era. Unlike simple wear or damage, this doubling is part of the original design, created at the moment the die itself was made. That makes it a true mint error, and true mint errors are always in demand. Another factor that affects value is condition. Most 1984 D pennies you find in circulation are heavily worn, scratched, or dull from decades of use. However, coins that were carefully saved or never circulated can still show sharp details, bright copper color, and smooth surfaces. These higher-grade coins are much harder to find today, especially without stains or spots from the zinc core reacting over time. Collectors and grading services use detailed scales to judge condition, but even without technical knowledge, you can tell when a coin looks unusually clean and sharp. Coins with strong details in Lincoln's hair, clear lettering, and minimal marks are always more desirable. When you combine excellent condition with a known error like the doubled ear, values can rise quickly. Real-world auction results show just how surprising these values can be. Ordinary circulated 1984 D pennies are usually worth only 1 cent. But a confirmed doubled ear variety in nice condition has sold for hundreds of dollars. In top condition, with professional certification, some examples have reached well over $1,000 at auction. These are real sales between serious collectors, not guesses or exaggerated claims. Even non-error 1984 D pennies can carry modest premiums if they are in exceptional condition. Coins graded at the highest levels by professional services can sell for amounts that seem unbelievable for a penny from the 1980s. This proves an important lesson in coin collecting. Rarity is not just about how many were made, but how many survived in pristine condition. With higher values comes the risk of fakes or altered coins. Identifying a genuine 1984 D penny is usually straightforward, but identifying a real doubled ear error requires careful inspection. Many people mistake damage or wear for doubling. True doubling will appear rounded and smooth, matching the original design, not sharp or jagged like scratches. Using a simple magnifying glass, focus on Lincoln's ear and nearby details. On a real doubled ear variety, the extra outline is clearly separated and consistent. Weight is another helpful clue. A genuine 1984 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. Significant differences could indicate damage or alteration. While counterfeits of modern pennies are rare, altered coins do exist, so caution is always wise. One fun and surprising fact about the 1984 penny is how it reflects a turning point in U.S. coinage. The zinc core introduced in the early 1980s means these pennies can corrode from the inside if the copper plating is damaged. That's why many older pennies look bubbly or discolored. This makes truly clean examples even harder to find decades later. Another interesting detail is that many people unknowingly spent valuable error coins as normal change for years. The doubled ear variety was not widely known at first, meaning some of these coins passed through countless hands before collectors recognized their importance. Even today, a few may still be hiding in old jars, drawers, and forgotten collections. Collectors love the 1984 D Lincoln penny because it offers a sense of discovery. It's a coin that invites you to look closer, to slow down and examine details most people ignore. It represents the idea that history and value can hide in plain sight, even in the smallest denomination of U.S. currency. For newer collectors, this penny is approachable. It's affordable to search for, easy to recognize, and rich with educational value. For experienced collectors, high-grade examples and confirmed errors present a real challenge and a meaningful addition to a collection. It bridges the gap between everyday change and serious numismatics. As time goes on, fewer high-quality examples remain. Pennies are easily lost, damaged, or discarded, and zinc-based coins are especially vulnerable to decay. That slow disappearance adds another layer of interest for collectors who think long-term about preservation and rarity. So the next time you see a 1984 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Turn it over in your hand. Look closely at Lincoln's ear. Notice the details of the Lincoln Memorial. Think about the billions that were made, and the few that stand out because of a tiny mistake or extraordinary condition. That simple coin might not change your life, but it can change the way you see everyday objects. Sometimes history whispers instead of shouting. Sometimes value hides in the smallest places. And sometimes the most ordinary penny can tell a story worth far more than 1 cent, waiting patiently for someone curious enough to listen. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a penny you've seen 1,000 times before. It looks ordinary, almost invisible in daily life. But what if that simple penny carried a hidden story, a quiet connection to American history, and a value that depends on tiny details most people never notice? Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 1988 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that many people overlook, yet collectors study closely. This coin is a 1-cent piece from 1988 featuring the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front. What makes it interesting is not what's printed on it, but what's missing. There is no mint mark under the date, which tells us something important about where it was made. To most people, that absence means nothing. To collectors, it's the starting point of a much deeper story. To understand this penny, we need to travel back to the late 1980s. The United States was in a time of economic stability, and pennies were still a regular part of everyday spending. In 1988, the United States Mint was producing billions of 1-cent coins to meet demand. The Lincoln penny design had already been around for decades, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. By 1988, it had become one of the most recognized coins in the country. When a penny from this year has no mint mark, it means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. For many years, Philadelphia did not place a mint mark on pennies, unlike Denver, which used a D, or San Francisco, which used an S. So while no mint mark might sound unusual, it actually tells us this coin came from the main mint that produced the majority of everyday U.S. coinage. The 1988 Lincoln penny reflects a major shift in American coin production that had already happened a few years earlier. Before 1982, pennies were mostly made of copper. Rising metal costs forced the mint to change the composition. By 1988, pennies were made with a core of zinc and a thin copper coating. This change kept production costs low but also created new possibilities for errors and variations that collectors pay attention to today. On the front of the coin, you see Lincoln's profile facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1988 to the right. The reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was used from 1959 until 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, one of the most detailed designs ever placed on a small coin. At first glance, millions of these pennies look exactly the same. That's why most people assume they are worth only 1 cent. But collectors know that value often hides in the details. Small differences in strike quality, surface condition, and especially minting errors can dramatically change how much a coin is worth. One of the most talked about aspects of the 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is the possibility of errors. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the minting process. These mistakes are unintentional, and that's exactly why collectors love them. Some 1988 pennies have been found with off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned. Others show doubled features, where letters or numbers appear slightly repeated because the die struck the coin more than once. There are also examples with weak strikes, missing details, or unusual surface textures. Because pennies were produced in such large numbers, quality control focused more on speed than perfection. That means a small number of unusual coins slipped through and entered circulation. Condition plays a huge role in value. A worn 1988 penny that's been in circulation for decades is usually worth just face value. But a well-preserved example, especially one that never entered circulation, can be worth significantly more. Collectors describe these as uncirculated or mint-state coins. The difference between a scratched, dull penny and a bright, sharply detailed one can mean the difference between 1 cent and several dollars. In some cases, high-grade 1988 no-mint mark pennies have sold for surprising prices. Coins graded by professional services and found to be in near-perfect condition can sell for $10, $20, or even more dollars. Error coins can go much higher, depending on how dramatic and clear the mistake is. While these are not everyday prices, they show how much attention collectors give to quality and rarity. You might be wondering if stories of extremely valuable pennies apply to this coin. It's important to be realistic. The 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is not usually a rare coin by date alone. Millions were made. Its value comes from condition and errors, not simply from being old. Still, collectors actively search through rolls and old jars of pennies looking for standout examples from this year. So how can you tell if you have a real one and not something altered or damaged? Start with the basics. Check the weight. A standard 1988 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly heavier or lighter, that could indicate damage, plating, or a different type of error. Look closely at the edges and surfaces. Natural mint errors usually look smooth and consistent, while damage from circulation or tools often looks rough or uneven. Magnification helps a lot. A simple coin magnifier can reveal doubling in letters, unusual lines, or missing details that aren't visible to the naked eye. Pay close attention to the date and lettering, as these are common places for errors to appear. If something looks unusual but natural, it may be worth further research. There are also plenty of fun and surprising details about this penny. For example, many people don't realize that the Lincoln Memorial design allows you to see Lincoln on both sides of the coin. He appears as a portrait on the front and as a tiny statue on the back. This makes the Lincoln penny one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person twice. Another interesting fact is that pennies from the late 1980s often show zinc corrosion if the copper coating wears away. This can make coins look damaged or bubbly. While this kind of damage usually lowers value, it also tells the story of how modern pennies age differently from older, solid copper ones. Collectors today love the 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it represents a bridge between eras. It's modern enough to be familiar, yet old enough to carry decades of history. It reminds people of a time when pennies were still widely used, saved in jars, and counted by hand. For many collectors, searching for these coins brings back memories of childhood, piggy banks, and the simple thrill of finding something interesting in everyday change. This penny also appeals to beginners. It's affordable, easy to find, and teaches important lessons about condition, mint marks, and errors. More advanced collectors appreciate it as part of a complete Lincoln cent collection, where every year and mint variation matters as you look at your own change. Remember that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it hides in the smallest details, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. The 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny may look ordinary, but its story is anything but. It's a reminder that history often passes quietly through our hands, one small coin at a time. So the next time you spot a penny dated 1988, don't rush past it. Take a closer look. That tiny piece of copper-colored metal might just spark a new curiosity, a deeper appreciation for everyday history, or even the beginning of your own collecting journey. And who knows, the penny you almost ignored could be the one that makes you see your spare change in a whole new way. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a penny that looks completely ordinary, something you might normally toss aside without a second thought. But what if that exact penny, dated 1991 with no mint mark, carried a quiet story of American history, hidden details, and the potential to be far more interesting than its 1 cent face value suggests? Stay with me because the small coin has more to say than you might expect. Today we're talking about the 1991 no mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have handled, spent, and forgotten, yet one that continues to capture attention among collectors and everyday people alike. At first glance, it looks like a normal cent. It shows the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But its story is tied closely to a specific moment in U.S. history and to the way American money was made at the end of the 20th century. The 1991 Lincoln penny was produced during a time when the United States was changing rapidly. The Cold War was ending, technology was advancing, and the U.S. Mint was striking billions of coins each year to keep up with everyday commerce. Pennies were still essential for cash transactions, vending machines, and exact change. In 1991, the Mint focused on efficiency and volume, producing huge numbers of 1-cent coins for circulation across the country. This particular penny comes from the Philadelphia Mint, even though there is no letter on the coin to say so. That missing letter is the key detail. When a Lincoln penny from this era has no mint mark under the date, it means it was struck in Philadelphia. At the time, the Philadelphia Mint traditionally did not place a mint mark on pennies, which is why collectors refer to these coins as no mint mark cents rather than explicitly calling them Philadelphia issues. The design of the 1991 penny follows a tradition that began decades earlier. The front of the coin features the Lincoln portrait designed by Victor David Brenner, first introduced in 1909 to honor Lincoln's 100th birthday. By 1991, this design had become one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. Lincoln faces to the right, with the date below and the word Liberty to the left. Above his head is the familiar phrase, "In God We Trust." On the back of the coin is the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been in use since 1959. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, a detail many people never notice. This made the Lincoln penny one of the few U.S. coins at the time to show the same person on both sides. In terms of metal, the 1991 no mint mark penny is made primarily of zinc, with a thin copper coating on the outside. This composition had been in use since 1982, when rising copper prices forced the mint to change how pennies were made. While older pennies were mostly copper, the 1991 cent is about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. This change reduced production costs but also made the coins lighter and more vulnerable to certain types of damage over time. So why would anyone care about a penny that was made in huge numbers and still turns up in pocket change today? The answer lies in condition, errors, and collector interest. While millions of 1991 no mint mark pennies were struck, only a small percentage survived in pristine condition. Most were heavily circulated, scratched, darkened, or damaged through everyday use. Collectors pay close attention to pennies that remain in excellent shape, especially those that appear almost exactly as they did the day they left the mint. Coins graded in top condition by professional grading services can sell for far more than 1 cent. A regular 1991 no mint mark penny in worn condition is usually worth face value, but examples in uncirculated or near-perfect condition can bring significantly higher prices. Another reason this coin attracts attention is the possibility of mint errors. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin-making process. In 1991, as with many other years, a small number of pennies were struck with errors such as off-center designs, doubled letters, weak strikes, or clipped planchets. These errors are not common, and when they appear on a 1991 no mint mark penny, they can greatly increase its value. Some collectors search specifically for double die errors, where parts of the design appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die-making process. On certain examples, you might notice doubling on the date, the word Liberty, or In God We Trust. While dramatic double dies are rare for this year, even minor doubling can attract collector interest if it is clear and well-defined. When it comes to real-world values, auction results give us a clearer picture. Circulated 1991 no-mint mark pennies usually sell for just a few cents at most. However, uncirculated examples graded at high levels have sold for much more. Coins graded MS-67 or higher by reputable grading companies have been known to sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on eye appeal and market demand at the time of sale. Error coins can command even higher prices. A 1991 no-mint mark penny with a strong off-center strike or a dramatic mint error can sell for several $100s. And in rare cases more, especially if the error is visually striking and the coin is well preserved. These are not everyday finds, but they do exist, which is why people continue to check their change. Identifying a genuine 1991 no-mint mark penny is straightforward, but there are a few things to watch for. First, check the date. It should clearly read 1991. Next, look under the date. If there is no letter, that is normal and indicates Philadelphia. Be cautious of coins that appear altered, such as dates that look too thick or uneven, which could indicate tampering. Weight is another helpful clue. A standard 1991 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A scale can help confirm this. If the coin is significantly heavier or lighter, it may be damaged, altered, or not authentic. The color should also be consistent with copper-plated zinc, not solid copper like older pennies. Magnification is useful when checking for errors. A simple magnifying glass can reveal doubling, cracks, or other unusual features. However, it's important to remember that not all doubling is valuable. Machine doubling, which looks flat and shelf-like, is very common and usually adds no value. True double dies have a more rounded, raised appearance. There are also some fun and surprising details about the 1991 penny that make it interesting beyond value alone. For example, 1991 pennies were minted during the same year the United States was involved in the Gulf War, a major historical event. While the coin itself doesn't reference this, it quietly connects to that moment in time, having circulated during a period of global change. Another interesting fact is that pennies from the early 1990s often show zinc corrosion if the copper plating is damaged. This can cause bubbling or pitting on the surface, something collectors watch for when grading condition. Coins without this damage are more desirable and harder to find than you might think. Collectors today appreciate the 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny not because it is flashy or famous, but because it represents the everyday nature of American money. It is a reminder that even the most common objects can carry history, craftsmanship, and potential value if you know what to look for. For new collectors, this penny is an accessible starting point. It's easy to find, inexpensive to collect in most conditions, and offers a chance to learn about grading, mint marks, and errors. For experienced collectors, high-grade examples and unusual errors provide a satisfying challenge. The appeal of this coin also lies in its familiarity. Almost everyone has held a Lincoln penny at some point in their life. Realizing that a simple coin from 1991 could be worth more than face value encourages people to slow down and look more closely at what they already have. As we come to the end of this story, the 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny stands as a quiet symbol of American coinage. It may not make headlines or break auction records on a regular basis, but it continues to spark curiosity, inspire collectors, and remind us that history often hides in plain sight. So the next time you see a penny dated 1991, don't rush to spend it. Take a moment to look at it closely. Check the details, feel its weight, and remember that even the smallest coin can carry decades of history and the possibility of surprise. Sometimes, the most ordinary things are only ordinary until you really pay attention. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a penny that looks completely ordinary, worn from years of use, maybe even forgotten at the bottom of a drawer. Now imagine learning that this same penny could carry a story that stretches across American history, modern manufacturing, and the passion of collectors who search rolls of coins every single day. Today, we're taking a deep look at one of those overlooked coins, the 1992 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a small copper-colored coin with a much bigger story than most people ever realize. The 1992 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in Denver in the early 1990s. A time when pennies were still a daily part of American life. Millions were made, spent, saved, and forgotten, which is exactly why so many people assume they are all the same. But when you slow down and really examine this coin, you discover a fascinating mix of history, design, minting technology, and collector demand that keeps it relevant even today. To understand this penny, we need to step back to 1992. The United States was in a period of transition. The Cold War had recently ended, technology was advancing quickly, and everyday Americans were still using cash for nearly everything. The United States Mint was producing billions of coins each year to keep up with circulation needs. Pennies were essential for pricing, change-making, and commerce, and the Lincoln cent remained the backbone of small transactions. The Lincoln penny itself has a much longer history. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. It was the first regular-issue U.S. coin to feature a real historical person, which was a bold move at the time. By 1992, Lincoln had already been on the penny for more than 8 decades, making the design one of the most familiar images in American history. The 1992 D penny was struck at the Denver Mint, indicated by the small D mint mark found on the front of the coin, just below the date. This single letter tells us where the coin was made and plays an important role in collector value. In 1992, pennies were produced at multiple mints, but Denver was responsible for a massive portion of circulation coins that year. The design of the 1992 D Lincoln penny follows the classic Lincoln memorial style. On the front, you see Lincoln's right-facing portrait, dignified and calm, surrounded by the familiar words, "In God we trust," "Liberty," and the date. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial appears with its clean lines and balanced structure. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, a detail many people never notice without magnification. The metal composition of the 1992 D penny is also important. By this time, pennies were no longer mostly copper. Rising metal prices forced a change in 1982, and by 1992, pennies were made of a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. This makes the coin lighter than older pennies and gives it a different feel when dropped or compared side by side with earlier issues. So why would a modern penny like this attract attention from collectors? The answer lies in condition, errors, and scarcity in high grades. While millions of 1992 D pennies were struck, most entered circulation immediately and were used heavily. This means truly pristine examples, especially those that look almost exactly as they did the day they left the mint, are surprisingly difficult to find today. Collectors often focus on coins graded in very high condition, sometimes described as mint state. These coins show no wear, sharp details, and original shine. For a 1992 D penny, finding one in average circulated condition is easy. Finding one that looks nearly perfect is much harder, and that difference dramatically affects value. Another major reason collectors search for this coin is the possibility of mint errors. Errors occur during the manufacturing process, and they can turn an ordinary penny into a highly desirable collectible. On 1992 D pennies, collectors look for off-center strikes, where the design is noticeably shifted, double strikes, where parts of the design appear twice, and die cracks, which look like raised lines caused by damaged minting equipment. One of the most exciting aspects of error coins is that they are unpredictable. 2 pennies from the same year and mint can look completely different. This uncertainty keeps collectors searching rolls of pennies even today, hoping to spot something unusual that others have overlooked. When it comes to value, most 1992 D pennies found in circulation are worth exactly 1 cent. However, condition changes everything. Uncirculated examples saved in rolls or sets can be worth several times face value. High-grade examples certified by professional grading services have sold for impressive prices compared to their humble beginnings. At auction, top condition 1992 D Lincoln pennies have reached prices that surprise casual observers. Coins graded at the highest levels have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on eye appeal and demand at the time of sale. Error coins can sell for even more, especially if the error is dramatic and clearly visible without magnification. Collectors value these coins not because they expect instant riches, but because they represent a challenge. Modern pennies are often overlooked, and finding a standout example feels like uncovering a hidden treasure in plain sight. That sense of discovery is a huge part of the appeal. Identifying a real 1992 D penny is straightforward, but knowing what to look for makes all the difference. Start by checking the date on the front and the D mint mark. The coin should feel light, consistent with zinc-based pennies. Examine the surfaces carefully under good lighting. Look for sharp details in Lincoln's hair, beard, and coat, as well as clear lines on the Lincoln Memorial. Be cautious of altered coins. Sometimes, mint marks are added or changed to make a coin appear rarer than it is. On genuine coins, the mint mark will look natural, with the same texture and wear as the rest of the coin. Anything that looks glued, scratched, or unusually placed is a red flag. Using a simple magnifying glass can reveal important details. Many collectors start this way before deciding whether a coin is worth professional evaluation. Authentication and grading services exist to confirm a coin's legitimacy and condition, giving buyers and sellers confidence. There are also some fun and surprising details about the 1992 penny. Because of its zinc core, it reacts differently to damage than older copper pennies. If the copper coating is breached, the coin can corrode quickly, creating unusual textures and colors. While damaged coins are usually not valuable, they can look dramatically different from what people expect a penny to be. Another interesting fact is how many people unknowingly save these coins. In the early 1990s, many families set aside rolls of pennies, assuming they might be valuable one day. Decades later, those same rolls are being rediscovered in drawers, closets, and old boxes, fueling renewed interest in coins like the 1992. Collectors today love this penny because it sits at the intersection of old and new. It carries the familiar Lincoln design that dates back generations, yet it represents modern minting practices and materials. It's affordable, accessible, and full of potential for those willing to look closely. The 1992 Lincoln penny also serves as a reminder that coin collecting isn't just about rare gold pieces or ancient artifacts. It's about curiosity, patience, and learning to see value where others see the ordinary. Every coin has a story, and sometimes the most interesting ones are hiding in plain sight as you go through your change or open an old jar of pennies. Remember that history doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the smallest details, like a tiny D beneath a date. The next time you see a 1992 Lincoln penny, you might pause for just a moment longer, knowing that this modest coin carries decades of history, craftsmanship, and collector passion within its worn copper surface. And who knows, the next great discovery in coin collecting might already be waiting in your pocket. What if the penny you've ignored for decades, the one that looks just like 1,000 others, is quietly telling a much bigger story than you ever imagined? Today we're uncovering the truth behind the 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that seems ordinary at first glance but holds a fascinating place in American history and in the world of collectors. The 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States during a time of major transition for American coinage. When a penny has no mint mark, it means it was struck in Philadelphia, the original home of U.S. coin production. Millions of Americans carried this exact coin in their pockets during the 1990s, spending it without a second thought, never realizing how much history and detail was packed into something so small. To really understand this coin, we have to travel back to 1994. The United States was in a period of economic stability, inflation was relatively low, and cash was still king. Credit cards were growing, but coins and paper money ruled everyday life. The Lincoln cent design had already been around for decades, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. By 1994, the design was familiar, trusted, and deeply woven into American culture. The penny struck that year continued a long tradition. It was made to meet the enormous demand for everyday commerce. Vending machines, gas stations, grocery stores, and payphones all relied on coins. The U.S. Mint produced billions of pennies annually to keep up. In 1994 alone, Philadelphia struck well over 2 billion Lincoln cents without a mint mark. That number alone tells you this was not intended to be a rare coin. But abundance does not mean insignificance. The 1994 penny represents the end of an era. During this time, pennies were still made mostly of zinc with a thin copper coating, a change that had taken place in 1982 to reduce costs. Older pennies were solid copper, but rising metal prices made that impractical. The 1994 penny weighs about 2.5 grams and contains a zinc core coated in copper, giving it that familiar warm color. The design of the coin is simple but powerful. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln's profile, calm and thoughtful, facing to the right. Above his head is the word liberty, and in front of his face is the date, 1994. Just below the date is the phrase, "In God we trust." These words have appeared on U.S. coins for generations, reflecting the values and history of the nation. Turn the coin over, and you'll find the Lincoln Memorial. This design was introduced in 1959 and was used until 2008. The memorial is detailed enough that, on well-struck coins, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the building. Above the memorial are the words United States of America, and below it is 1 cent. The phrase E pluribus unum sits above the memorial, meaning out of many, one. So what makes a 1994 no-mint mark penny interesting to collectors if it's so common? The answer lies in condition, errors, and the stories people attach to these coins. While most examples are worth just 1 cent, some stand out dramatically from the rest. Condition is everything in coin collecting. A 1994 penny that has been circulating for years will show scratches, dull color, and worn details. These coins usually have no premium at all. But a penny that has never been used, known as an uncirculated coin, can be worth significantly more. Bright red examples with full original luster are especially desirable. Collectors grade coins on a scale, and high-grade uncirculated examples from 1994 can sell for several dollars. That may not sound impressive, but remember, this is a coin that originally cost 1 cent. A few dollars represents a massive percentage increase in value. Even more exciting are error coins. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the minting process, and they can turn an ordinary penny into a collector's prize. One known error to look for in 1994 pennies is a double die, where parts of the design appear doubled. This can show up in the date, the lettering, or Lincoln's profile. These errors are subtle but dramatic once you know what to look for. Another possible error is an off-center strike. This happens when the blank coin isn't properly aligned when it's struck, causing part of the design to be missing. Off-center pennies from 1994 can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on how dramatic the misalignment is. There are also broad strikes, where the coin spreads out wider than normal, and clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is missing due to a cutting error. These types of mistakes are rare compared to standard coins, which is why collectors actively search for them. Real auction results show how much difference condition and errors can make. A typical circulated 1994 no-mint mark penny sells for face value. An uncirculated example in excellent condition may sell for $1 to $5. A high-grade specimen certified by a professional grading service has sold for even more, sometimes reaching into the double-digit dollar range. Error coins are where prices jump the most, with some verified examples selling for over $100. Because valuable coins exist, it's important to know how to identify a real one. First, check the date carefully. The numbers should be clean and evenly shaped. Look for doubling using a magnifying glass, especially on the date and lettering. Genuine doubling will look like a shadow or second image, not just blurry wear. Next, examine the weight. A standard 1994 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A significant difference could indicate damage, alteration, or an unusual error. Also, pay attention to the color. Original coins have a consistent copper tone. Strange discoloration can be a sign of environmental damage rather than added value. Be cautious of altered coins. Some people try to fake errors by carving, grinding, or gluing metal. Real mint errors happen during production and show smooth, natural surfaces. If something looks rough or artificial, it probably is. One fun fact about the 1994 penny is how many of them are still out there. Because so many were made, collectors often use them as teaching tools. New collectors learn how to grade coins, spot luster, and identify errors by practicing with pennies from this era. Another surprising detail is how sentimental these coins can be. Many people associate 1994 pennies with childhood memories, allowance money, or the early days of collecting. Coins don't just hold metal value, they hold personal history. Collectors love the 1994 no-mint mark penny because it represents accessibility. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to enjoy collecting. You can search through pocket change or old jars and experience the thrill of discovery. That feeling, The moment you realize a common object might be special is what keeps collectors engaged for life. This coin also reminds us that value isn't always about rarity alone. It's about condition, history, and context. A single penny can tell the story of an entire era in American life, from manufacturing practices to economic habits. That as you look at your spare change, remember that every coin has a story. The 1994 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny may not make you rich overnight, but it offers something just as valuable. It connects you to history, craftsmanship, and the excitement of the hunt. So the next time a penny lands in your hand, don't rush to spend it. Take a closer look. You might be holding a small piece of American history, quietly waiting to be noticed. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and realizing that this small coin could carry a story far bigger than its face value. A story tied to history, hidden details, and the quiet excitement that only collectors truly understand. Today, that ordinary-looking coin is the 2006 mint Mark Lincoln penny, a piece many people overlook, yet one that holds surprising importance in the modern era of American coinage. The 2006 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in the United States during a time when pennies were still widely used in everyday transactions. The letter D beneath the date tells us this coin was made at the Denver Mint, one of the most important coin-producing facilities in the country. At first glance, it looks just like countless other Lincoln pennies you may have handled over the years. But when you slow down and really examine it, this coin begins to reveal a deeper story. To understand the 2006 penny, we need to step back and look at why it exists at all. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. It was the first regularly circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. By 2006, nearly a century later, the Lincoln penny had become one of the longest-running and most recognizable coin designs in American history. The nation was approaching the bicentennial of Lincoln's birth in 2009, and interest in the Lincoln cent was quietly building among collectors. In 2006, the U.S. Mint continued producing Lincoln pennies for everyday use, even as discussions about rising metal costs and the future of the penny were becoming more serious. Millions of coins were struck that year, including those from Denver. While the 2006 penny was made for circulation, it came from an era when quality control, metal composition changes, and collector attention were all converging in interesting ways. The design of the 2006 Lincoln penny follows the familiar and classic look that Americans had known for decades. On the front, or obverse, is the right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design originally created by Victor David Brenner. Above Lincoln's head appears the word Liberty, while the national motto, "In God We Trust," curves along the top edge. The date 2006 sits to the right with the small D mint mark just below it, quietly identifying where the coin was made. The back, or reverse, still features the Lincoln Memorial design, which was used from 1959 through 2008. In the center stands the memorial itself, and if you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the building. Above the memorial are the words "United States of America," and below it, 1 cent. This reverse design makes the Lincoln penny unique because Lincoln appears on both sides of the same coin, something no other U.S. coin had done before. In terms of metal, the 2006 Lincoln penny is not made of solid copper like older cents from before 1982. Instead, it is composed of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating on the outside. This change was made decades earlier to reduce costs, but by 2006, it had become a defining feature of modern pennies. The coin weighs 2.5 grams and has a smooth edge, just like other Lincoln cents of its era. So why does the 2006 penny attract attention from collectors if millions were made? The answer lies in condition, errors, and timing. Most 2006 pennies found in circulation are worth only 1 cent. However, examples that remain in pristine, uncirculated condition can be worth significantly more, especially when professionally graded. Coins that show no wear, strong luster, and sharp details are far scarcer than their large mintage numbers might suggest. Errors are another major reason collectors search through 2006 pennies. Some coins from this year have been found with off-center strikes, weak strikes, double details, or plating errors where the copper coating appears uneven or missing in spots. These mistakes happened during the fast-paced minting process and slipped past inspection. Error coins are always popular because each one is unique and the more dramatic and visible the error, the more desirable the coin becomes. In the collector market, high-grade examples of the 2006 D Lincoln penny have sold for surprising prices. Coins graded at the top levels by professional grading services have reached values far above face value. In some cases, nearly perfect specimens have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars at auction, depending on demand and overall eye appeal. Error examples, especially those with clear doubling or striking flaws, can also command strong prices from dedicated collectors. Identifying a genuine 2006 D Lincoln penny is relatively straightforward, but it still requires attention to detail. Start by checking the date and the mint mark. The D should appear just below the date on the front of the coin. The design details should be sharp and consistent, with Lincoln's features clearly defined. The coin should weigh about 2.5 grams, and the color should be a consistent copper tone, unless a legitimate plating error is present. Be cautious of coins that appear altered or damaged, as post-mint damage is often mistaken for valuable errors. One interesting fact about the 2006 D penny is that it comes from the final years of the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. Just 2 years later, in 2009, the mint introduced special designs to honor Lincoln's life, and in 2010, the reverse changed again to feature the Union Shield. This makes the 2006 issue part of the closing chapter of a long-running design era that lasted nearly 50 years. Collectors today are drawn to the 2006 D Lincoln penny not because it is old, but because it represents a modern coin that still holds potential. Many collectors enjoy searching rolls of pennies from this era, hoping to find a high-grade example or a hidden error. It is a reminder that valuable coins are not always ancient or rare at first glance. Sometimes, they are hiding in plain sight. Another surprising detail is how condition-sensitive modern pennies can be. Because most people did not save uncirculated pennies from everyday change in 2006, truly flawless examples are much harder to find than you might expect. This scarcity at the top end of condition is what drives collector interest and value. The 2006 D Lincoln penny also appeals to collectors who enjoy building complete date and mint mark sets. Completing a full run of Lincoln Memorial cents in high quality takes patience, knowledge, and careful searching. For many, the 2006 D penny is an important piece of that larger collecting journey. As we come to the end of this story, remember that the true value of the 2006 D Lincoln penny is not just measured in dollars. It is found in its history, its details, and the excitement of discovery. The next time you see a penny dated 2006 with a small d beneath the date, take a closer look. You might be holding more than spare change. You might be holding a small piece of modern American coin history, waiting to be appreciated.